Okay, so tell me here. Well, tell me what you're seeing. Are you seeing anything?
I was seeing just a white screen there for a second.
How about now?
Nope.
Okay, 2 more seconds, guys. I'm sorry. Am I the only one that struggled with this?
We've had a couple. If there's dual monitors involved,
Well, that's the issue. So I do have dual monitors involved, but how's that?
It's good. Yep.
Okay.
You
Well,
can breathe.
guys, here's the deal. I am going to talk to you about some numbers, and I know sometimes when we hear that, and I just got done listening to Gary Cady speak, and he spoke a lot about numbers. Sometimes we can receive this in not such a positive light, but I want you to know something before I go. You are going to learn some things today about data and data analytics and why data matters and how to really use data that's going to have an enormous impact on how you see your business and run your business and how you improve team performance, team collaboration, EBITDA, and even driving not just more patient care, but better patient care. And really, if we truly understand how to use data and how to truly use it, not just see it, but use it and understand what data really is, it can transform the outcome of your life and those that you serve and those that you work with. And I really want that. I want you to gain some of that insight. We here at Dental Intelligence love data. We're in it all day long. We have over 100 million patients in our database. We have over 8,500 with some acquisitions that we've done as far as customers and their data in our database. And we see a lot and we understand what's going on in the industry and we want to share some of that stuff. So when I talk about numbers, I want you guys to look at some of these metrics. And I want you to ponder what some of these even mean. And when you give everything you have and everything you know, really everything you know right now to the care of your patients, to the success of your dental practice, to the success of your team, to your personal success, you have to ask yourself what's really in a number. And what's in a number is a piece of you. There's a piece of your patients. There's a piece of your team members. So I want you to know that even though I immerse myself in data every day, all day long, and work with offices and team members, and even here at Dental Intel and the industry in looking at what's going on with oral health care, I am absolutely aware that when we look at these numbers, it represents what we're doing individually and collectively in the industry. It represents your treatment coordinators, your dental assistants, your hygienists, your patients that are struggling, your patients that are getting healthy, your patients that are not getting healthy. We recognize that behind every number, there is meaning behind it, and that meaning is a piece of you in every one of these digits. So I wanted to start off and share briefly a story. This is Park City, Utah. It's ski season here right now, and I love to ski. And when we do go skiing, you see my apologies. You see a lot of different people come in the city. And many of you have probably been there and experienced that before. And I would call it a very transient city where you have people that come in during the winter time and they'll stay months on end. And then you have individuals that will come in the summertime, and it's kind of a different group because then you got your mountain bikers and your trail hikers that come in, and they're a little bit different than some of your skiers. Practicing here can actually be pretty difficult. It's not the easiest place to practice, but we came across a practice, Dr. Reed, who asked us if we would help him out. He wanted to sell his practice and he was wanting to do a practice evaluation. Now, we didn't do that. That's not what our company is about, but he asked us to help him understand what's going on in his practice. We learned very quickly that this doctor for 8 years was paying himself less than $80,000 a year in compensation, and he had been practicing there for 8 years. We also learned that he was working 5 days a week, but 3 of those days was in another practice because only 2 of them he could keep full in his practice and keep things going. He shared with a colleague of mine that people in this area just didn't feel he was a great dentist, and that's why he couldn't keep his chairs full. He also didn't feel like he could attract new patients. And really, it got down to selling was his only option. That's where his mind was. He was, and I don't think all dentists are in this situation, but we've all experienced these moments from a CEO to a CEO. If I've got a lot of CEOs on this phone, and if you're a practice owner, you are a CEO, you've experienced the ups and downs of running a business. It's not easy. It's hard. And we'll go through these moments. And this doctor was running this way for several years and wanted a change. And he felt the only change he could have was to sell his practice. Well, we asked him if we could get smart and take a look at what was going on. And we did. We quickly installed a tool that would grab all the information from within his practice management software and start to get reports and start to analyze some of these reports and some of these metrics. And I wanted to share with you a couple things, and I'm going to run through this fairly quickly here, but he had 1,800 active patients. At this time, this doctor was doing less than $600,000 of annual production a year. If you take the average of collections inside across the East Coast to the West Coast of a GP practice, you're going to be somewhere between $480 all the way up to $800 of collections a year from a patient. That's the average. That's the mid mark that you're going to be in that range. And I know that's a big range because I'm giving you a range across the nation. But when you take a look at that, if you take even the low end, he should have been doing substantially more than $600,000 production a year. He was averaging 240 new patients a year. His biggest problem, and this was not his only problem, but it was definitely a leading indicator, a sign that there was an issue, was that he only had 20% of his patients scheduled to come back into his practice. So I want you to just think about that for a minute and the impact that that can have on a practice. We started working with him and started looking at numbers, started looking at data, started using data in the right way, and he started seeing substantial changes. In fact, within 4 months, this doctor was on track to take home $200,000 of compensation within 4-month period. He finished the first 12 months taking $413,000 out of this practice. He now only works 4 days a week. He has an additional associate working in his practice, and you couldn't purchase this practice, this single location practice now, for less than $2 million. He used information to identify opportunities, and then he went to work. Now, we've learned a lot about that and some of the principles and from some of the coaches and consultants that have been speaking with us over the course of these 2 days as well. And I'm not going to necessarily get into a lot of that consulting side because I really want to help you guys understand the data side and really what to look for. So here's the question. How can data really help? And what data will help? How can it help and what will it help? If you can't answer those questions really concisely right now, then it's going to be really hard for you to use data in a healthy manner. So I'm going to walk through these things, but I first want to talk to how can data help. So before I can answer how data can help, it's important to answer this question too. We need to understand that there are 2 types of data inside our businesses that can be extremely helpful in your dental practice or any business for that matter, my business too. There's what we call reporting data, and it's usually based off of performance. And then there's analysis data, which is to help us really interpret what we see on the reports and to find those opportunities that we can move forward with. Now, as I look at these 2 things, some people are probably thinking, well, what's the difference between this? And you need to understand the difference. So what is the difference between reporting data and analysis data? So I want to walk through this flow chart. And data reporting, the first part, the reporting part, it can tell you what's happening or what has happened with your business. But without the context or knowing why something is happening, your interpretation won't be based on all the facts. And it will then lead to frustrations and sometimes really big misses. Simply put, reporting uses data to track the performance of your business, while an analysis uses data to answer these strategic questions about your business. And so they are distinct differences. Reporting and analysis, and even though they are distinctly different, we're going to walk through how to do it in different scenarios so you can start doing this in your practice. Though they're distinct, reporting and analysis have to rely on each other. Reporting sheds lights on what questions to ask, and the analysis attempts to answer those questions. Luckily, here's the deal, you guys. And I know that many of you have not been through a lot of schooling around data analysis, but you're scientists, you are scientists. And so you do understand this concept. And you don't have to be a data scientist to build reports, as you know, or to make analysis for your dental practice. In fact, I'm going to walk you through the difference here and how to look and use data to get better results. But there's two big problems. Some of us are trying to take action. So we go all the way to the action phase, and we do that without any reporting. We don't have good data in front of us, or we have what I like to call lagging data, just end of day sheets. And it's nothing really that's going to drive change in the practice or help us understand what is happening. And we skip the reporting side and we go straight to analyzing. We go straight to asking questions, but we don't have any data to ask questions based off of. And we start making changes and action plans. Others do it differently. And we have all the reporting and we go straight from reporting and we look at the numbers and we immediately say, we need to do this. And we go straight to the action and we skip the analysis part. Both of these are critical in order to have successful outcomes. You cannot do one without the other. And oftentimes I see so many dental practices having one piece, but they're not doing the other piece. And there's really not a consistent flavor that I see out there that they're all having the reporting or they all have the analysis. And occasionally we have people that have a really good system and process for dealing with both. So I want to really make this simple. It's 3 steps, you guys. It's really 3 steps. You've got to look. That's your reporting. So you've got to get some reporting in place. You then got to discover. And so how do you discover? We're going to talk a little bit about that, but you've got to discover. These are the questions. This is the analysis that can be done. And there are tools that can help and assist with this discovery. But then, oh, I messed this up. I'm sorry. Then you got to take action. And so you put that plan together. So and then you repeat it. And you're never going to change this. You can do this daily in morning huddles. You can do it weekly. You can do it quarterly. But these are the three steps: look, discover, and discuss. And discuss is the action plan. Like, put it together and then go back and look, discover, and discuss again. So when we think about this process, the first type of data that I just mentioned, remember there's 2 types. There's reporting data and there's analysis data. The first type is reporting data. Generally in the past, this has always been measuring human performance. The performance of human beings, what our team members are doing. But today, we actually need to look a little bit deeper than just measuring human being performance because of the amount of technology that we now have in our practice that is supposed to be automating outcomes for us. And if we're not measuring the outcomes of that automation, then we may be purchasing solutions and technologies and these workflows that's actually not performing. So it's important to make sure we have results and data reporting on both humans in our practice, our team members and us, and also on the technology that we're implementing to automate what humans used to do inside our practice. Now, most of us, if not all of us, have heard of this quote. I've heard it said many different ways, and this is one that I found, but when performance is measured, performance improves. And where performance is measured and reported, the rate of improvement accelerates. Is this true? Is this true? Will performance truly improve by simply measuring and reporting results? Do you believe that that's true? Anyone who understands performance tracking will not ever argue against the benefits it will have on one's outcomes. In fact, this has been one thing that's proven by science repeatedly over and over again in many different case studies. There was an individual by the name of Brian Tracy. Some of you have probably heard of him. He's one of the top professional speakers and authors and has written more than 70 books that have been translated in dozens of languages. But in one of his books called The Psychology of Achievements, he said, there's a rule in psychology. The more you focus on a particular number, the more that number improves. The more you focus on a particular number, the more that number improves. And if you think about it, if you focus on collecting more money, and that's what your whole office is wrapping your head around, that you're going to start improving your collection percentage. You're going to collect more money. You're going to reduce your AR days. if you transfer this outside of work, if you start focusing on really wanting to lose weight, you start measuring and tracking and counting your calories, and you're jumping on a scale every single day, guess what's going to happen? Naturally, you're just going to start improving this area. If you really want to improve your fitness and you want to improve your VO2 max, or if you want to improve your speed as a runner or as a biker or whatever it is that you're in, there are so many metrics and wearable watches and heart rate monitor systems that you can really start refining your performance. And if you do that, you're absolutely going to improve. And taking this back to your practice, if you want to improve your hygiene reappointment, excuse me, and you start really focusing on that, you're absolutely going to be reappointing more patients. Now, there is a good and a bad way to track human being performance and to report this performance back. There's a good and a bad way of doing this. And even if you think about good, there's the good, better, best concept that I think we're all pretty aware of. Oftentimes when I speak with people who have felt that performance tracking data feels like a big brother type focus or a scary situation, it's because the leaders in the practice have not learned how to effectively use data. And most often it's because they forget the analysis portion of using these reports. They just go from report and they don't include the team members in the analysis or in that discovery session as to why the numbers are where they're at. And that creates frustration and anger and disappointment. And so it's important, again, that when we think about the types of data, there's reporting data and there's analysis data. So I want to talk to you about analysis data. And I really see the analysis data as opportunity data. This is the data that will help you see opportunities and also prioritize opportunities. Okay. It's using data to prioritize what your team members' tasks are. Let me give you an example. And then I'm going to talk about some of the data that's on the screen. When you have a team member, or several team members for that matter, who are responsible for keeping a schedule full. So in one realm, they're responsible for using technology to do that. And in another side, they're responsible for making phone calls to do that. Well, what type of data are they using to ensure that they're optimizing, that schedule is optimized, that they're identifying the right patients at the right time, and making sure that they're analyzing various areas that's going to make sure your schedule is optimized to its full potential. And not just full potential of getting higher production, you guys, but full potential of providing the most amount of treatment to the patients who need the most amount of treatment, that can pay for the treatment, that do show up, that will say yes when you diagnose that treatment is needed in order for them to get healthy. Are they using data to prioritize who and when? And what type of data are they using? Is it what they feel they're limited to? Or is or are they expanding because technology allows you to expand on that? Here's a really good example. I want you to see Sherry Lee here. And yes, I have permission of these providers to share their data. I would not be doing that. But I want you to look at Sherry Lee. She's a hygienist. Now, the analysis data, you guys, if you look at this top, Sherry Lee, when the Dr. Richardson was presenting treatment in the various hygiene chairs, here are the hygienists that he was presenting treatment with, or in their operatories, as he was coming in and doing his doctor exams. You can see that Sherry was not performing well. Now, I would strike off Kristen up there at the top, because it was a very small sampling. She only presented 8,900, or the doctor only presented 8,900 in her operatories. But if you look at Lindsay and Heidi, those are significant increases to where Sherry is. But here's something really interesting to notice. Sherry had the most amount of treatment presented in her chairs. And there was a reason for that. She dealt with most of the new patients. So a lot of the new patients were coming in through her chairs. And so there was a lot of limited exams and new patient exams that were being done in her hygiene operatory. So you can see why she would have a lot more treatment that was diagnosed and presented. But we had a session with these guys. Now, data is one side. If you just left it at the reporting, and then you took this and said, Sherry, here's the deal. You've got to improve this area, because when I leave as the doctor, you have the lowest percentage of patients converting into treatment, and you left it at that, it's going to create a lot of frustration. Sherry's going to feel down. and she's not going to feel like she's contributing the ways she needs to. And it's going to hurt the situation more. But here's the deal with this practice, that's not what happened. There was a discovery session, or what I would say, an analysis done. We looked at different things and we studied different numbers, and I'm not going to get into all the depths of that because it's too much to go into right now, but there was a conversation amongst the team. And that conversation is that discovery session, this analysis session. And we actually talked to Lindsay, and Lindsay was talking to the whole group and all the hygienists. And we immediately discovered that Sherry was just way too busy. She had assisted hygiene going on, so she had some help. She was bouncing from one op to the other operatory, and she saw an enormous amount of patients that were coming in. And she never had time to interact with the patient post the doctor's diagnosis and exam like Lindsay was. There just was no time for her. And that was discovered. And so immediately, because they had data, they knew what questions to ask. And after they knew what questions to ask, they were able to discover that it was a time issue. They made the changes, and you can see the results of this change. I mean, there's not that much of a difference of treatment that was presented, but look at the amount of treatment that was accepted. And not only did this have an impact on Sherry, it had an overall impact on the entire organization. So this is the difference between just reporting and then analyzing. So how can data help, and what will data and what data will help? Now I want to talk to you about what data will help, because there are so many things out there that you can measure. And just because you can measure it does not mean you should measure it, because it can be overwhelming. So I'm gonna jump into this now. There's only a few levers in a dental practice that you can really pull. Hopefully some of you guys have seen this multiple times with us. If you sat on any of our education and lectures, and I know that I see several other coaches that teach this principle now. But there are a few levers that you can pull to increase profitability in a practice. You can pull on what we call the visit lever, the production per visit lever, the collection percentage lever, or your collection activities, and how you spend money in a practice. And it's these levers that really lead us into what we call our profitability formula. So if I were to just put these levers in here, and here's the actual formula. So you see that this is a mathematical formula. We put our number of visits that we see in a practice. You multiply those number of visits by your average production per visit. You multiply that by your collection percentage. You take off your overhead. That's going to be your profits in a practice. We should not ever overcomplicate this, you guys. It's really that simple. So when we say, what should we be looking at? Well, what lever has the biggest opportunity to have the greatest impact on your practice? And you can either look at the greatest impact on providing more treatment to patients, or the greatest impact as an EBITDA. Generally, those two things are synergetic. And if you do one, the other is going to fall in line. So when we take a look at this, these first two levers here, visits and production per visit, when you take those two things together, that's your production. So that's what's going to increase production. I'm not going to dive into all of these, but if you were to think about how to increase visits, you can get new patients, you can reappoint your patients, you can reactivate patients, you can improve your case acceptance, because if they say yes, they're coming back for an appointment to get more treatment done. One of these things that's oftentimes missed, you can reduce the broken appointments. So there's several metrics within each lever that you do need to focus on and look at, but you don't need to be looking at them all the time. You need to identify what are the 1 to 2 that I can elevate in my practice and go to work on making that change. But again, it's reporting that will help you see what you need to change. And then it's that discovery or analysis data, as you ask questions and sit together as a team, that will help you understand what change or what opportunity needs to take place. And then you go put those things in place. If you don't have a copy of this, you will definitely get this to you and get this out. But here are all the leading indicators that have an impact on impacting your visits, impacting the average production per visit, impacting your collection percentage, and impacting your overhead that will ultimately result in the profits. Now, I want to just talk to you about this production formula, because this is really where a lot of people may come in, and your accountants may come in and say, look, we got to start cutting costs. And that is true if you're overspending in areas, but that's not going to accelerate more care in your practice. And that is not going to accelerate higher production in your practice. It's these first two levers that are going to have the biggest impact. So I want to walk you through now a couple case studies of reporting data and then taking reporting data to the analysis data and the results of what happens when these two things come together. And we're going to move through this fairly quickly because I want to give anyone some time to ask questions if you have some questions here. So here we go. When we think about the report, the reporting, or these two productions, I'm going to talk to you about this practice that we have been working with up in Traverse Mountain. This practice, you can see, was increasing production year over year. And this practice started, by the way, just in the December before 2014. But year over year, this practice was growing. And so most people would look at the report and they would say, hey, we're doing well. Every year we see an increase to our production. And arguably so, anyone would say they're doing well. I mean, as you take a look at this. And so they look at that and they're celebrating. But this is what we know. There's two ways to increase production. You can increase the production by your future visits, or you can increase your production by increasing your average production per visit. So it's either an increase in production because you have more patient visits, or it's an increase in production because you're improving your average production per visit, or you're doing more with the patients that are actually in the chair. This is the results of that practice. And when we talked to the doctor, they were so busy, they were growing, they were seeing more patients than they've ever seen before, year over year. But at the same time, if you talk to this doctor and ask him how he was doing, he would say that we were busier than we'd ever been before, but we weren't taking home any more money. And they weren't. And why? Well, here's the deal. I just want you to take a look at this. This top chart is the future visits year over year. So this is the reporting. Just take a look at the orange. That's when they started. That's 2014, then 15, then 16, then 17, and it continued to grow. And like you would think a new practice would in increasing visits. But simultaneously, look what started happening to the production per visit down below. So reporting is one area, right? This is one thing that you can look at. Reporting is going to highlight this. But if we just leave it there and we show this to our team members, all they're going to be hearing is, oh, we need to work harder. We need to work longer. They're not going to get any direction because we skipped the analysis part. But take a look at what impact this had on his practice. In 2014, his average production per visit was $464. In 2017, he fell to $189. The variance was a drop of average production per visit of $275. Now you plug this into the formula. His average monthly visits that he had in his practice was $362, or 362 patients seen a month. His average production decrease, $275 per visit. This is a $99,550 variance per month. I mean, this is data, but again, it's not helpful if we don't analyze what's causing that. So first step is the reporting to help us discover it. The second step is the analysis data to help us analyze it and understand what opportunities do we need to work on or change. When you do that, you're going to see big outcomes. And so again, you guys, the production formula is looking at the amount of visits that you have coming in and multiply that by your average production per visit. You need to be asking, or you should be asking yourself right now, what am I doing to focus on these two levers? Am I even measuring areas in these two levers? And when I do find opportunities in these two levers, am I going through an analysis phase with my team to discover what we need to be doing, or what might we be doing wrong, or what we might need to change in order to get better outcomes? Here's a few proofs. Dr. Jepson. Now, you guys heard from Wendy Briggs earlier. Well, some of you may have. She's a consultant in the industry and focuses really on hygiene. When we first installed Dental Intelligence and got some data for Dr. Jepson, so this is the reporting data, we could easily see that his average production per hygiene was really low, comparable to industry standards. It just was not performing well. And so the next step after getting the data and knowing that that's the case was to ask the questions, why and what? Discover that. we had some discovery sessions. I could see very quickly what was going on because we dove into some other areas and some of the analysis, and we could see that there wasn't any perio going on. There wasn't any preventative care going on. It was basically just cleanings. And there wasn't necessarily a standard baseline of oral health care established to be able to discover opportunities with the patients in order to keep getting them healthy or prevent them from going into an unhealthy state. Well, they made a decision after taking a look at this that they wanted to bring in a hygiene coach, and they did. And when he came in here, and I kid you not, amazing things happened. First of all, it wouldn't have happened without the discovery. We needed the data to know that there was a problem. But once we had the reporting data, they brought her in. She had one session with them, just one. I want you to, and I was there for it, and it was great. It was a few hours long. She went in there and talked to them about the importance of preventative care and identifying opportunities for preventative care where it made sense. And then also talked to them about perio and how to really identify what perio looks like and when it's a problem and how to talk to the patients about it. And immediately they went to spring break after the training. So they weren't even open for the next week. The week after, when they got back, this was the result. It was like a light switch flipped on. It just changed immediately. That's how powerful reporting can be, coupled with analysis and making some changes. Dr. Craig Spodak, another similar example. We were in his practice and looked at data. And after implementing a solution within a week, he texted back and said, my treatment acceptance percentage increased by 10% after going through this process. We have Dr. Barry Parrish in Benicia, California, who had a similar example. You can see where his treatment acceptance percentage was in his practice. He presented about the same amount of treatment the very next month, but his treatment percentage almost doubled. It didn't quite double, but almost doubled. And guys, it was a combination of looking where he was at, identifying where they really wanted to be and where they could be, and then taking the time to do the next step, which is analyzing. What are we not doing? What is causing a lower treatment acceptance percentage than what we wanted? Discussing that with the team, and then putting a plan together, and then going and acting and repeating that cycle again, cycle 1, 2, and 3. And it's going through that type of process that really can have these type of impacts. Pre-appointment percentage. This is the percentage of your patients that you have scheduled out of all of your active patients in your practice. What percentage of your practices has a future scheduled appointment? Right now, I can tell you the industry average, you guys, after COVID, the percentage of patients have a future appointment right now after COVID is sitting at 48.8%. It is a drop from where we were at with all of our customers in our database right now. And again, that's over 8,000. In 2019, it was 56%. So I want you to visualize the impact that COVID had on the percentage of our patients that are scheduled inside our practices. Does that mean these patients don't need the care anymore? Absolutely not. When we do another analysis out of the 100 million patients that we have in our database and the open chair time that's available in our practices, it would take on average our customers, our dental intel customers, would take them on average 3.8 more operatories or equivalent to that in order to see their unscheduled active patients within a 6-month period of time. You don't have room. You don't have room to see them all. So you can use good analysis data to discover, well, how do I prioritize then what patients should come in? But you can't just, I want to show you this practice. We had a practice that this actually may have heard from Gary Tax as well earlier. I think he either spoke earlier today or yesterday, but this was one of his practices that he was working with. And when we looked at the data, they were really confident that they had all their patients scheduled. Well, she was so confident that she said it was over 85%. And Gary knew where it was at. We knew where it was at. Gary said to her, now, are you sure we're rescheduling everyone or that high of a percentage? And she said, yeah, we make sure that this is something we really think about. And so then we looked at the data and we showed her the facts. They were at 40% pre-appointment percentage. This was a really big eye opener for her. In fact, she sat there and the first question she said, well, is this right? And so we had to go through, it was probably 15 to 20 patients, you guys, looking at the unscheduled patients. And it's interesting, she knew her patient base so well. In fact, she's like, there's no way that person's unscheduled. They were just in here just the last week and we had talked about them. And then we would go into their practice management software and confirm, okay, they're not scheduled. And she'd be like, oh, and after doing that like 15 to 20 times, she finally just paused and sat there for a second. And it was a moment of silence. And she's like, wow, we really suck here. This is something we need to improve on. And so we could have left it there at the reporting, right? Gary could have just left it right there at that moment, but he didn't. They started doing an analysis. They started looking at it and looking at some other metrics and identified what was causing pre-appointment percentage to drop. It was interesting because their hygiene reappointment. So when the patients walk out of the practice, it was actually really good. In fact, they were over the 80 percentile on hygiene reappointment. So when a patient left coming back in, but again, why was the pre-appointment down? So we had to look at some additional data and discover what that is. You guys just think about that right now. What could cause, if you have over 80% of your hygiene patients are reappointing, then why would you have less than 50% of your total patient base scheduled to come in? Well, broken appointments that don't get rescheduled. Patients that come in and they're scheduled right now for restorative care, and then they leave that restorative care appointment, we don't make sure that they get back on. Limited patients that come in for limited exams, and we don't make sure that we're converting them. So there's a lot of reasons why you can have good hygiene reappointment, but not have a good pre-appointment in the practice overall scheduled percentage. You can see the impact after them doing this discovery and identifying the changes that they need to make, and there were several of them that they had to make changes on to get these type of results, that they immediately jumped up to, not immediately, it took some time, you guys. This actually took some time, but it was worth it. Absolutely worth it, because now they don't have patient churn in their practice. And you can see where this was. You can see what was happening before. The red is all of their lost patients. The blue is all of the new patients that are coming in. The jaggedy line sitting there is their growth. So their net growth between lost patients and new patients. And you can see what started happening as they started making a focus on this. Part of that focus was making sure that they were reactivating all these unscheduled patients. And so they had to go to work and actually start making calls or using technology to actually get these patients back into practice and on the schedule. And you can see that there was team member performance that was tracked as well. But here's the deal. This is, I want you to understand this. You look at this first team member up here, 145 calls compared to the next team member here at 104 calls. And then you carry that through some performance, and you can see that this person is doing $32 per attempt, and this person is doing $69 per attempt. Well, every time this person's on the phone, they're having a lot higher success. But look down at this one now, $136. Again, this is the reporting, right? I would scratch off the 231 because they only made 4 attempts. But you look at this 136 that made 90 attempts. Well, what would I want to do now? This is the reporting. If you just left the reporting at this and that's all you shared with your team, you didn't have an analysis discussion or a discovery discussion with them, all you're going to do is make some team members feel bad and other team members feel great. And it's not going to be healthy. You have to take it to the next level. You have to discover. You have to find out what this team member is saying and what this team member is doing when he or she gets on the phone as compared to the other team member. And when you can discover one of those 2 or 3 things, that's when all of your team members are going to gravitate to wanting to look at data. Because again, I said this at the very beginning, we have a firm belief that all people want to improve. All people want to improve, but it needs to be a healthy environment. You need to use data in a healthy way to allow that to happen. And when you do things like that, I am telling you, you are going to see insane changes in your practice. So I want to just quickly go back to this slide right here, because this is the biggest principle I want you to walk away with. You cannot just get reporting and not have discovery sessions with your team. You cannot just have discovery sessions with your team without good reporting. You can't do it. Those 2 things have to be combined together. If you become diligent and change processes and systems in your practice to do one thing this year to have a big lift in your organization, to improve team collaboration, to improve not just more dentistry, but even better dentistry, if there's one thing, it's getting this system down right here. Get the reporting, look at it, discover it with your team. What are things that you can do, but don't try to discover without good data. And then discuss your action plan and go to work and repeat that cycle. And guys, I don't care if you start doing this just monthly. It doesn't matter if you want to go, if you're not doing this at all in this type of cadence, daily might be too much. So don't go from nothing to all of a sudden doing this daily. If you're doing it monthly, maybe look at doing a weekly meeting. If there's morning huddles, you guys, which hopefully everyone's doing by now. If not, go check out some ebooks that we put out on effective morning huddles. But you should be doing it to some extent daily, but I don't want you to overwhelm yourself either. So just take a look at this information and start using data in a healthy manner. And when you can understand the difference between these two datas, here, let me stop sharing my screen now so I can just chat with you for a second. When you start understanding the difference between reporting data, human performance tracking, or even now technology tracking, and analysis data. If you really got that concept today, and if you didn't get it, ping me. I just like I heard Gary say, he loves nothing more than helping people learn, gain knowledge, and I'm the same way. I will spend some time with you and have a one-on-one call with you if you want to do that. We want you to grow. We want nothing more. But it's going to be really hard to grow with data if you don't do discovery sessions after that, the analysis. It's going to be really hard to grow if you just start doing analysis and start asking questions, making changes without good data. The two of them together really have to comb. And if you do that, I'm telling you, you're going to see some great improvement. So I'll pause there. And if there's any questions, and Jerem, I don't know if you've moderated, and there may not be any, and that's okay too.